Life is suffering. Your job is to find out why, or the psychology of Viktor Frankl, the truth. Nobody wants to hear, let's be honest. There are days when just getting out of bed feels like dragging your soul through wet cement. You look around and nothing makes sense. Everything feels heavy. The smiles look fake. The routines feel meaningless, and deep down you wonder, why am I even doing this? What's the point of all this suffering? If you've ever asked yourself that, then this is for you. The lie you've been sold, because here's a truth no one wants to say out loud: life is suffering. Not in a poetic, abstract way, but in the brutal, unrelenting reality of being human. Pain is not an exception. It's the rule. And the world you live in, it has lied to you. You've been conditioned to believe that happiness is the goal. If you're not smiling, something must be wrong. With you, life should be easy, pleasurable, and smooth. Discomfort is a problem to be fixed, a glitch to be medicated, a phase to be escaped. But what if that belief is the very reason you're suffering? Viktor Frankl's discovery, the Austrian psychiatrist. Viktor Frankl endured the unimaginable horrors of Nazi concentration camps. He didn't just survive Auschwitz. He studied the human mind in its darkest state. And what he discovered will shake you. Suffering is not the enemy. Meaninglessness is. The difference between survival and surrender: Frankl watched people around him stripped of everything: family, health, dignity, even their names, and yet some of them endured with strength, purpose, and even compassion, while others, in the exact same conditions, crumbled and gave up. Why? What made the difference? The answer that changes everything: it wasn't strength, it wasn't luck. And it definitely wasn't positive thinking. The difference was whether or not a person had a why to live for, a reason, a purpose, something or someone that gave their suffering meaning. Frankl quoted Nietzsche often: he who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. And he didn't just say it. He lived it every single day inside the gates of hell. What this means for you. So here's what we're going to do. I'm not here to give you hollow motivation or tell you everything's going to be fine, because you and I both know that's not how life works. I'm here to tell you the truth. You will suffer. You already are. The real question is, will your suffering mean something? If you're tired of running from the pain, pretending that numbness is normal, feeling like you're losing yourself in a world that offers you distractions instead of depth, this is your call to stop, to face the pain, and to find the meaning hidden inside it. Your job is not what you think, according to Frankl. Your job is not to eliminate suffering. That's impossible. Your job is to discover the meaning that makes suffering bearable, and sometimes even sacred. This isn't just a psychological idea. It's a survival strategy for the soul, and by the end of this, if you're brave enough to walk through this with me, you'll see your suffering differently, not as punishment, but as the first invitation to transformation. The man who studied hell, Viktor Frankl, didn't speak about suffering from the safety of an armchair or the distance of a lecture hall. He spoke from the belly of the beast. A man who lost his parents, his brother, his pregnant wife, all to the Holocaust. He was imprisoned, starved, stripped of everything that made him someone. What he noticed, but inside that hell, he made a discovery so powerful that it would become the foundation of a psychological revolution. He noticed something strange. Two men could be placed in the exact same unthinkable condition. Same brutal labor, same starvation, same abuse, and yet respond in completely different ways. One would give up, collapse, die within days. The other would endure, even smile, faintly help others, resist dehumanization, hold on to something invisible. The critical difference, Frankl realized. The difference wasn't in the body, it was in the spirit. It wasn't optimism, willpower, denial, it was meaning. The man who had something to live for, a child he hoped to see again, a book he still wanted to finish, a mission he had not yet fulfilled, was able to survive what should have been psychologically and physically impossible. He could suffer because that suffering became a form of sacrifice. It was for something. And that made all the difference. The will to meaning, Frankl called this the will to meaning, the deepest motivation in the human soul. More primal than pleasure, more enduring than power. It is the existential engine that keeps us moving forward when everything else collapses. It's not a luxury. It's not a philosophical concept. It is a lifeline. Shattering the dominant paradigms. This idea was so radical, it shattered the dominant psychological paradigms of his time. Freud believed human behavior was driven by the pursuit of pleasure. Adler by the pursuit of power. But Frankl saw something deeper. We are driven by the pursuit of purpose. The radical truths strip a person of their comforts, freedoms, dignity, and if they still believe their life means something, they can endure unimaginable suffering. But take away their why, and even the most comfortable life becomes unbearable. This is why some people living in luxury still feel like dying and they're covered in mud, and pain can keep going with unshakable strength. It's not about what you have, it's about what your suffering means. When the spirit dies, Viktor Frankl watched as those who lost their inner reason to live deteriorated rapidly. Once the sense of meaning was gone, the body followed. In the camps, the moment a prisoner stopped believing their suffering had purpose, their health declined, their eyes went blank soon after. They died, their spirit had died first. This is about your life right now, and this isn't just about death camps. This is about your life right now. You may not be behind barbed wire, but you're still in a kind of prison, a mental, emotional, existential one. Maybe it's depression, burnout, a sense of numb emptiness that no achievement seems to fill. You wake up asking, why bother? And if you don't have an answer to that question, everything feels heavier than it should. Frankl's promise, Frankl's revelation is not easy. It doesn't offer a shortcut, but it does offer hope. You don't have to escape your suffering to survive. You have to give it meaning. That's the work. That's the shift. That's your task. The 3 paths to meaning, but how do you actually find that meaning? Frankl identified 3 distinct paths through which any human being in any situation can discover a purpose so deep it can carry them through hell. The path of creation and contribution, the path of love and connection, the path of transforming unavoidable suffering. Let's explore each one. Path 1, creation and contribution. There is a kind of suffering that breaks you open, not to destroy you, but to reveal what's been buried inside all along. And Viktor Frankl believed that one of the most powerful ways to turn pain into meaning is through creation. Not necessarily in the artistic sense, but in the existential one, the act of giving something to the world that only you can give. Work is sacred calling. When we speak of work, we usually reduce it to jobs, salaries, careers, but that's not what Frankl meant. He was pointing to something deeper, something sacred. He believed that each of us carries a unique potential, a contribution that no one else can make. And when we engage with that potential, we find meaning even in the face of unbearable suffering. Evidence from hell, Frankl saw it firsthand in Auschwitz. There were prisoners who, even in the filth and terror of the camps, kept others alive with small acts of service. Doctors who treated the sick with no medicine men, who gave away their last piece of bread. Teachers who whispered poetry and stories to help others hold on to their sanity. They weren't surviving in the ordinary sense. They were creating meaning through what they gave. The question that matters, ask yourself this: what would you do even if no one paid you? Even if no one noticed? Simply because it matters. That question is not motivational fluff. It's an existential mirror, because buried beneath your numbness, anxiety, confusion, there is still something that calls you to. Serve, build, shape. Offer the problem with modern life. But here's the problem. Modern life drowns that voice. We're constantly distracted, told to chase external validation, money, status, likes, applause, trained to see work as a means to comfort, not as a path to purpose. And in that process, we lose connection with the deepest source of meaning, the act of giving yourself to something that matters more than your comfort. The last, human freedom. Frankl argued that even if your external situation is hellish, you still possess the freedom to choose your attitude and your contribution. That freedom is the last human freedom, and it can never be taken from you. In his words, the meaning of life is to be discovered in the world, rather than within man or his own psyche as though it were a closed system. Meaning is not something you invent. It's something you discover in what you create and who you serve, in the unique fingerprint you leave on the world. Start small. So how do you apply this? Start small. You don't need to change the world overnight, but you do need to create, write, build, help, speak, teach, heal, even for an hour a week. Especially if your current job feels meaningless. That doesn't define you. You define you by choosing what to do with your suffering, your pain as raw material, maybe the pain you carry, is the very material you're meant to turn into something that will help others survive theirs. That book idea you keep ignoring, that podcast, that community you want to start, that child you want to raise better than you were raised, that's not random. That's your soul trying to speak. The question that changes everything, because when you stop asking, how can I avoid suffering? And start asking, what am I willing to suffer for? Everything changes. Path to love and connection. And yet, creation is only one path. Some of us feel too broken to build, too overwhelmed to contribute. And that's okay. Frankl knew that not everyone can create all the time. Some of us find meaning not in what we give, but in what we receive: love, beauty, human connection. When you feel utterly alone, there is a kind of suffering that makes you feel utterly alone. If your pain is invisible, as if no one could possibly understand what you're going through, in those moments, meaning can feel like a distant illusion, some philosophical abstraction that doesn't help you get out of bed. But Viktor Frankl knew something different. He knew that even when you have nothing left to give, meaning can still be found in what you receive from the world, not in material possessions, not in achievements, in love. Love that transcends everything. Frankl believed that love was one of the most powerful sources of meaning available to any human being. He didn't mean romantic love, although that can certainly be a part of it. He meant something broader, deeper, the experience of being deeply connected to another soul. The realization that your life matters not in theory, but in the heart of someone else. The image that saved him in the concentration camp. Frankl survived in part by mentally conjuring up the image of his wife. He didn't know if she was alive. He didn't know if he'd ever see her again. But the thought of her face, her voice, her love gave him the strength to carry on through hell. He wrote, "Love goes very far beyond the physical person of the beloved. It finds its deepest meaning in his spiritual being, his inner self. Whether or not he is actually present, whether or not he is still alive at all, ceases somehow to be of importance. That is the kind of love that doesn't fade when things fall apart. The kind that anchors you when everything else collapses. The question you must answer. So let me ask you directly, who are you living for when the suffering becomes too heavy? When the despair starts whispering in your ear, who do you think about? A parent, a child, a friend, a mentor, a pet, even the memory of someone who once saw you, really saw you, can be enough to pull you through darkness. The simple truth, sometimes meaning, isn't found in a grand mission or a powerful idea. Sometimes it's as simple as realizing if I disappear, someone will hurt. Someone will lose something they can't replace because I matter to them. Beyond people, beauty, and it's not just people. Frankl also emphasized the importance of experiencing beauty, nature, art, music, poetry. He observed that even in the darkest moments, prisoners who paused to admire a sunrise or who cried listening to a distant melody preserved their dignity. These weren't distractions. These were spiritual lifelines. When did you last stop for beauty? When was the last time you deliberately let beauty stop you? Not just noticed it, but allowed it to move you. We live in a culture that worships noise, speed, and distraction. But beauty, real beauty, forces you to feel. It reawakens the soul. In that moment, you remember there is something in this world still worth staying for. The second path, this is the second path to meaning, the realization that your life is not an isolated existence, but a thread woven into the fabric of others' lives. And when you can't carry your own suffering, love gives you a reason to keep going. Not out of obligation, but out of connection. Path 3, how you suffer, but what happens when you've lost everything, when there's no one left to live for, no beauty to see, no work to be done. Frankl faced that too. And he discovered one final path to meaning, the deepest of all. It's not about what you create. It's not about what you receive. It's about how you suffer. The pain no one can fix. There is a kind of pain that no one can fix. No comfort reaches it. No words soothe it. It's the kind of pain that simply is a terminal diagnosis, the death of a child, the collapse of a dream that defines. Your life in those moments, no amount of love, creative project, external achievement can take it away. And that's where most people break, where transformation happens. But Viktor Frankl found that this is also where something extraordinary can happen, not outside of the suffering, but inside it. A kind of transformation that only becomes possible when there is nothing left. To hold on to accept your inner freedom to choose how you will suffer. The last human freedom, Frankl wrote, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. When everything else is stripped away, that choice remains. You can't always choose your suffering, but you can choose the posture you take toward it. And that, he believed, was not just a coping mechanism. It was the highest expression of human dignity. Acts of quiet rebellion in the camps. Frankl saw men who had lost everything, family, health, identity, and yet still found meaning through the way they carried their suffering. One man gave away his last crust of bread, another whispered word of comfort to others on the brink of death. These weren't grand gestures. They were quiet acts of rebellion against despair. They were proof that even in hell you can choose to be more than your pain. The brutal truth, but let's be honest, this isn't easy. The world we live in has trained you to believe that suffering is failure. That if you're in pain, you must have done something wrong. That you need to fix it immediately, medicate it, avoid it, numb it, scroll past it. Frankl's truth is far more brutal and far more liberating. When suffering is unavoidable, your job is not to escape it. Your job is to ask, what can this suffering become? The transformative questions: can it make you more compassionate, deepen your understanding of others, break your ego so something more honest can be born? You probably heard the question, why is this happening to me? But Frankl would challenge you to ask a different one. What is this asking from me? That shift in attitude is where meaningless pain begins to transform into purposeful struggle. You are not broken. You are not weak because you suffer. You are not broken because you cry. What breaks you is the belief that your pain is pointless. And Frankl's entire philosophy exists to destroy that lie. The question you must ask, so ask yourself, if I can't avoid this pain, who can I become through it? That's not a question you answer once. It's a question you live day after day, sometimes minute by minute. And each time you choose to suffer with integrity, dignity, intention, you reclaim a part of yourself that no suffering can touch. The heart of Frankl's legacy, this third path, is not about winning. It's not about pretending you're okay. It's about showing up anyway, about refusing to let your pain dictate your character. And in many ways, this is the heart of Frankl's legacy. You do not need to eliminate suffering to live a meaningful life. You need to become someone who can stand inside it and still choose who you are. Logotherapy, the practical tools, but knowing this truth is one thing, living it is another. How do you actually begin to build this strength? How do you cultivate the kind of inner freedom that allows you to hold your suffering without being crushed by it? That's where logotherapy, Frankl's method, comes in. Not just philosophy, understanding suffering is one thing, but how do you live through it when it feels unbearable? How do you stop the spiral when your mind is screaming for relief and nothing around you seems to change? Viktor Frankl didn't just offer philosophy, he created a psychological method, logotherapy. A therapy not focused on pleasure or power, but on meaning. A therapy designed for people standing face to face with the absurdity of pain, chaos, and despair, not to eliminate suffering, but to redeem it. The revolutionary question, and here's what sets logotherapy apart. It does not ask, what do you want from life? It demands, what does life want from you? The existential vacuum, Frankl saw that much of modern suffering isn't rooted in trauma or disorder. It comes from emptiness, from a loss of direction, from a life filled with distractions but void of purpose. He called this condition existential vacuum, and it's everywhere in the scrolling, the overworking, the numbing, the endless pursuit of comfort that never delivers peace. The three practices, so how do we fight back? Frankl developed practices not vague ideas, real tools to interrupt the spiral and refocus your soul. Practice 1, dear reflection, most modern therapy tells you to dive deeper into your emotions, analyze yourself endlessly. Frankl disagreed. He believed that too much self-focus makes suffering worse. The more you obsess over your own happiness, the more it eludes you. The more you fixate on your own pain, the deeper it digs in instead. He taught people to look outward, to stop asking, what do I feel? And start asking, who needs me right now? What problem can I solve outside of myself? Because paradoxically, when you forget yourself in the service of something larger, your suffering loses its grip. Think about it. How many times have you felt lost only to come alive when helping someone else, even in the smallest way? That's not an accident. That's logotherapy in action. Practice 2, paradoxical intention. Frankl used this, especially with patients paralyzed by anxiety. If someone feared a panic attack, he'd tell them to try to have one. If they feared trembling in public, he'd say, shake harder on purpose. Why? Because fear feeds on resistance. When you confront it intentionally, even humorously, you rob it of its power. What does this mean for you? If you fear suffering, stop running from it, meet it, study it, ask what it wants to teach you. Say to yourself, let me suffer consciously. Let me feel this fully and choose how I respond. That attitude flips the script. It turns you from victim to witness, from prisoner to participant. Practice 3, choosing meaning moment by moment, and this leads to the most radical practice of all, choosing meaning moment by moment. Frankl never claimed that meaning was easy to find, but he believed it was always possible in every moment, no matter how painful, no matter how hopeless, and that's the core of logotherapy, the idea that meaning is not something you wait for. It is something you create by the way you choose to live even in the face of horror. You can choose to find meaning in your work, your love, your attitude. You can choose to give your pain a purpose, even if no one else sees it, even if the world offers you nothing in return. Not idealism, survival, and this is not just spiritual idealism. This is survival. This is what allowed people like Frankl to endure the unendurable. And it's what you must cultivate if you want to walk through your own darkness with your soul intact. The final truth, there comes a moment, maybe in the dead of night or in the middle of a crowded room, where you still feel completely alone and all the philosophies, all the techniques, all the words fall silent. You're left face to face with your suffering. No more distractions, no more denial, just you and the weight of what you carry. And in that moment, one final question remains. Will you let this pain destroy you, or will you use it to become someone new? The raw core, this is the raw core of Viktor Frankl's message. When you cannot change your circumstances, you are challenged to change yourself, not as an escape, not as a fantasy, but as an act of rebellion against despair. Frankl did not deny the brutality of life. He lived it. Sugarcoat suffering, he walked through it, and still he believed in the power of the human spirit to stand up and say, this will not break me. I will make something of this. The brutal truth, because here is the brutal truth that no one wants to admit. Life is suffering. But suffering is not the end. Meaning is, and meaning is not a gift. It is a responsibility. You do not wait for it to arrive. You create it through your choices, your actions, and your courage. That's what makes it real. The questions you must ask, so what is life asking of you right now? What pain have you been running from that might contain the seed of your greatest strength? What would happen if you stopped resisting and started listening to your suffering? You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to feel ready. You only need to decide that your pain will not be wasted, not one scar, not one tear, not one silent, sleepless night. Where everything changes, because the moment you make that decision, everything changes. Your suffering doesn't disappear, but it starts to serve you to become material for something greater. It becomes a path. It becomes a story. It becomes a mirror for others who are silently enduring the same battle. And maybe it becomes the reason someone else chooses to keep living. Your task, so here is your task. Find your why. Let it become your anchor. And then no matter how hard life gets, never let go of it. That is what Frankl gave us, not an escape from pain, but a way to walk through it with dignity, a way to suffer on purpose, and by doing so become someone who cannot be broken? What suffering have you turned into strength? Or what meaning are you still searching for? There is power in sharing your story, not just for you, but for someone else who might need it more than you think. Because Viktor Frankl proved something that changes everything. Your suffering is not meaningless. It's not punishment. It's not evidence that you're broken. It's an invitation, a brutal, unrelenting invitation to discover who you become when everything else is stripped away. And when you answer that invitation with courage, with purpose, with a quiet determination to make your pain mean something, that's when you stop being a victim of life and become its author. That's when suffering transforms from a curse into a calling. And that's when you finally understand you were never meant to eliminate the pain. You were meant to give it purpose.